What is up, you savages? This is the Protect Your Neck podcast. I'm your host, Dan Tom, and this is where you can find over at MMA Junkie, as well as oddscheckerus.com. But on this here program, the Protect Your Neck podcast, we break down high-level MMA, and that's what we're going to do here tonight whenever you're listening to this. I guess maybe it's before the fights, depending. I mean, I'm not really going to be talking the Eagle FC stuff much. May peruse those odds, but recording this night before that fight. Going to talk a little bit of Bellator 273, at least the main event. If you want to check the timestamps for those, I'll get to that toward the top of the podcast, or toward the later end of the podcast, I guess. At least the main event. I got a pick and a play out there. You can see the in-depth breakdown that's up now at MMAJunkie.com. There's someone with a strong opinion on it, which I didn't expect to, so we'll see. You know what that means. I'll probably end up looking stupid, and like each fighter will just completely fight out of character and to make it completely awful look. But we'll see. If not, I like the one play I have heading into this non-UFC weekend. I didn't really do too much else. I'm not going to go too in-depth on the card. It'll be a quick preview of that Bellator card. Mainly going to talk and recap results from UFC 270. Ngannou versus Gone where? And of course, Moreno versus Figueiredo 3. Did not get to rewatch a lot of the things. First, I just want to say I'm just feeling a bit sluggish. It took me a while. It's late at night. I'm recording this. I had some things to do, granted. But I tested negative today, so I was pretty happy about that. So I'll probably see my mother tomorrow for the first time in like a month. Because she was gone in Hawaii for a minute. And then, of course, I caught the COVID before she came back there. So just thanks to everybody with kind words. It's not that hard to be kind in this day and age, but, with the way this world is, and you talk about this topic in particular, you just get all these messages, and not a lot of them are filled with compassion. Most are just, bootstrap bullshit, and so those of you actually actually wish well. I appreciate you. I really do. I've been exercising the old blocks and mutes and all that a lot lately. And, it just makes for a better experience. I know people get their rocks off and, think they won, but it's like, that's such a sad way to live, and anybody that thinks that is so pathetic, I need not worry, and neither should you. This world is just way too inundated already. There's no problem with filtering your experience for the better. In fact, I, and many to different extents, of course, would argue that it's a must. Anybody, outing themselves, just got whacked with a quickness. It's still a crappy world, a lot of misinformation, a lot of bullshit, so just keep each other safe out there. Get vaxxed if you haven't, wear your masks, all that stuff, and hopefully we can just stop making variants of this bullshit and get on with it. That's all I'm going to say about that. Too exhausted, and honestly, I'm just too emotionally taxed from this last year or so. Particularly this last year of the last two or whatever that we complain about has really been, ugh. But I appreciate those of you that are listening to this, man. You guys are the brightness in this space, and again, appreciate you guys wishing me well to end that on a positive. As I wish nothing but anybody well, regardless of their stance. We're human fucking beings, folks. So let's remember that. And look out for one another, God forbid. All right. I will do some quick Amazon link shouts too. I'll probably do that in the middle there. Don't want to follow a read through and off of that. And we'll get into the meat of that. We went 5-6 overall for UFC 270. We went 0-1 for parlay. 2 out of the 3 legs hit. We fell on the most confident part of it. We'll get to that. 1-1 in straight plays if you count the ad, which I did talk about. Even though I didn't bet officially when I did the podcast, I did talk about in post. And then I went 2 out of 3 for props. When you include the ad, which I talked about on here, and then I forgot about when I did that recap at the end of the episode. I couldn't remember what I cited, but I talked about it in the other things since, as far as Aaron's show, and then of course posted that all the ads. I've just been better about posting these things in general, especially because my play sheet for whatever didn't go up on the old odds checker, so that was strange. I'll still be billing for it, but hopefully everything will go up without a hitch for the next UFC event. Not doing Bellator with them, and I usually don't bet Bellator, and perhaps I'll be reminded of why with this bet that I have coming up. So yeah, that was that, and we'll get into the recap now from top to bottom. Francis Ngannou defeated Cyril Gane. Gane where? Yeah, people were asking me if I knew anything about the knee injury, I guess, just off the top. And that happened after my conversation with Eric. Not that I would share that anyways. But I know probably because I was reluctant to bet it. Although, like I always say, especially when I have money, or whether it's a not confident, a bias-ridden pick, or just a pick at the top, depending on how I'm managing money and want to do things whether I want to chase or free roll, as the kids say, I tend to do that if there's a potential play at the top. So that's what my hesitancy was. It wasn't from any inside information on the knee. Again, I'm not going to rat anything out for the podcast. I know it would make my podcast much more juicier, and I could tantalize inside information and really stretch it out as much as I want, but that's not my style. I know it's the style of culture today, so you'll see a bunch of people in the space, anything to make them feel important, and that's not your boy here. I give a shit about that. That's not, we all have egos, granted, but that's definitely not how mine works. So not looking to do anything of that. And to be honest, if you guys know anything, you guys know. You don't need me to tell you this. I mean, all these fighters going with injuries anyways. You know what I'm saying? With their knees, shoulders, and otherwise. That's kind of the deal. So I trusted that if they're going to go to battle, I trusted Eric. And Eric, even though he was a bit reluctant about it, self-admittedly, and he let the camp know and Francis know, but he also trusts Francis to know his own body, and they made that call. And yeah, man, that's chain of command, if you will, and faith in that. And yeah, it happened to work out for everybody. If you were on the Francis Ngannou side of things, if you're on the Gane where? Maybe not so much. A lot of stupid arguments after the fact. It's part of the reason I didn't really care to break this fight down. People were just arguing about both the top 2 fights, and I could really care less about the arguments. Like, people arguing what came first, the chicken or the egg. Gane went to do a leg lock. No, it was a sweep. The leg lock came first. No, the sweep came. Y'all are both right. Gane went for the leg lock. Not the greatest choice, but you can understand why he's gotten away with it before. Maybe he was thought that was the leg that was hurt, even though it wasn't, and even though he admitted that he didn't even know that the leg was hurt. Because to my naked eye, I was looking like the left, even though I believe it was Ngannou's right knee. But those things can be hard. It just depends on how the person carries or how they favor it. Ngannou was throwing leg kicks from southpaw, which was really smart. As far as taking away that open stance hard kick, almost kind of similar to that and the grappling tiring theme. It was very similar crossovers to the Giga and Cater. As far as Cater's footwork and stuff, using to close the distance, wrestling early, and really setting the tone off that. Kind of Hickson Gracie style. You get your opponent's heart rate above yours early, and that, at least from a fight pacing perspective, puts a large percentage in your favor, theoretically, on paper, right? because now you have made their motor work, no matter how good their motor is or perceived to be, like Gon's was, you make their motor work inefficiently under duress. And especially if a fighter has not really had to face that duress in those deep rounds before, like Gon has. He's went deep rounds before, but they weren't, Volkov had some bursts in round 4, and I believe in round 5, but, Volkov was very much happy to play Gon's game, and Rosenstruck, of course, will just sit there and stare at you and wait for his left hook counter. None of which grappled. Gon, if anything, was the one grappling in his fights. There's not a lot of wrestlers at heavyweight, which is a big leveling out, aside from the usual caveat of good for a heavyweight, right? Page note that for the later discussion in the Bellator main. So the southpaw to leg kick, and if it was southpaw leg kick, I mean he was pivoting off of his right. So in my mind, I just figure someone with hurt knees and who's thrown kicks and sounds very similar actually. MCL gone and partial ACL damage. Pivoting on the knee is going to be a lot harder than kicking with said leg that has the knee hurt. So that was the reason why I guess I assumed it was the left. So maybe Gon did, but of course he said he didn't in the post fight. People arguing about that, it's silly, but at the same time, I do think Ngannou, you shouldn't be denying him credit for that. Obviously, he's showing his jiu-jitsu, man. Sweep caused, opened up by a leg lock, but you could be like, oh well, so someone lands a counter punch, like, do we not and knock somebody out or whatever, and wins the fight with it? Or we're like, it wasn't a counter punch. It was this person throwing a stupid punch. You get what I'm saying? Like, how far are we going to go with this, folks? So, just chill out on that argument. And then tying the knee thing and that argument into the Cater Giga to the grappling part was, and Rogan obviously does this all the time, especially with muscly dudes. He's tired. But to me, Gon looked more tired, and it was more disturbing because we've seen Ngannou under duress before, but we haven't seen Gon under that amount of duress, and running out of answers, not really having efficient ways to get up off bottom. And credit to Ngannou, I mean, he was risk-grabbing, trapping the legs, establishing cross controls. I mean, Gon really had to sell out, and to his credit, and tripod. And to Gon's credit, when he did get up, he really sacrificed a lot. And to his credit, man, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but my butthole was clenching tight. And I didn't even bet Gon, obviously. I'm on Ngannou, but just for Gon, when he would belly down to get out, because Ngannou would have some form of, not really a half guard at that point, because Gon's turned out, but he still has a hook and an entanglement, if you will, on one of his legs, which is smart, and reaching across the body for cross control on a cross wrist ride, and otherwise known as Dagestani handcuff variation. And obviously that opens for some leverageable ground and pound. Oh man, did I clench, because, we'll talk about Bader later, but remember when, Anthony Johnson got in a similar position, and like Bader was already, and I don't even blame Bader, he was already just kind of tapping the mat. And then Anthony, I think, still knocked him out before the ref could get in there. But those positions at the bigger weights are really devastating. So I don't want to completely crucify Gon. This is his first time in these waters, like that, in multiple ways, right? And to his credit, he was able to do things like that. However, it just seemed to tire him too much, and that became harder to do. Grats to him for trying to turn the tables, and that would have been brilliant, right? I think we'd be praising Gon if he was able to keep top position, that whole 5th round, and I believe would have at least won it on 2 of the 3 cards. I believe one of the judges, Sylviana, gave the first round to Ngannou, which I have no issue with, because if you look, Ngannou was targeting the body. I think I saw Luke Thomas post something about the numbers tell the story of the fight, and as much as that makes me cringe because numbers don't tell the fucking story of the fight, I actually agree with the point Luke was making. But it was quite obvious one, as far as pointing to, obviously, the numbers were disproportionate to the body. it shouldn't have been a surprise to anybody because well, it wasn't a surprise to me. Anybody listen to this podcast, because it wasn't a surprise to me because that was one of the specifics as far as Eric Nixick told me in their game plan. Eric, you can hear him talking in the corner. I was telling you guys about this in my breakdown, this and that, as far as the body work, as well as legs too, which Ngannou did show, but I said body and leg work was going to be key. They were smart and knew not to headhunt from the get-go. Eric, and then they had pre-set combinations. They also saw what I saw as far as defense against the cage. His defense gets suspect. Now, where that kind of came into play was also even in the wrestling, which, we were talking more about the head positions, and they had it down to a T. As far as shot selections, preferred exit patterns have gone. It was really impressive. That's all hats off to Eric. And that counter left hook just seemed there all day. And I wasn't the only one that picked up on that. But publicly, even if you weren't privy to this podcast, Eric's told your eyes don't work and you couldn't see that Ngannou was clearly working Gon's body from the get-go. Eric's consistent with his messaging, like I always say. And he was, as far as working the body. And furthermore, the body work, and again, a lot of the foundation for the game plan you saw, and the game plan needed to beat someone like Gon, like I already said, it was already shown to us and laid out in the Stipe fight. For, I don't want to say as brief as it was still one of, Ngannou's longer fights, but it wasn't a 5-rounder like this or his first one with Stipe, right? But even in the 2 rounds that we did see, and not a full 2 rounds, obviously, we saw the leg kicks, we saw the body work, we saw the smart shifting pressure and combinations, and we saw the counter wrestling. And, everybody has to do their after the fact dances, and I hate that all the time. And, it's all the victory lapping is bullshit. But one thing I was defending myself and saying, and I hate it because maybe because people are sick of the victory lapping, so it's like they're armed to do this. But everybody was going just saying, oh, you said Ngannou knockout. Anybody who predicted and got to take away from their prediction or whatever, or their bet, or whatever it was. Someone was celebrating or someone was tearing down, or whatever your perspective is on it. But somebody credited me, and I didn't catch it on Schwan Humes' podcast, MMA Ratings, by the way. I know he also jumps on with Frank Posen, the Frank Posen podcast as well. And I have no reason not to believe Sean, because he's always, whether these tweets or podcasts, he's consistent with his stuff, and he's not out there victory lapping all the time or whatever. If he gets it wrong, he'll be just as open and verbose about that too. So he's a really honest and open dude. I much respect, big fan of his, which is why I've had him on the podcast and I have him back on. Apparently he made points. I'm not going to venture to say what it was or anything like that, because I don't know. But mine was, which I did say on this podcast, I did say in my breakdown written, I did say, even in private DMs when people were asking me hey, why'd you post that Gon footage? What does that mean? Before my breakdown even came out, of him doing the flying knee, ending up in the clinch, and giving double underhooks to Lewis. It's because it showed that even though typically going to reset yourself in the clinch, like in a Lewis fight, if you read my breakdown, Lewis's moments, even though I don't pick Lewis, I try to lay out a path to victory. And I said, well, Gon likes to reset himself in the clinch, like I've said consistently in my breakdowns with him. And so Lewis's chances are going to be on the way in or on the way out off the breaks, right? And Ngannou had that too, more potently. And another thing, which was a better takedown ability than Lewis, even though it was such a small sample size. Just seeing what Ngannou can do behind the, whatever muscly athleticism, Joe Rogan fantasy, jerk off to him while he's on the scales like he's Czech Congo narrative, the possibilities are infinite. Little inside joke there. No one, Joe Rogan never ogled harder at a man on the weighing scale than Czech Congo. My goodness. The good old days, folks. But yeah, and we saw that here as far as what the collisions could lead to. And the collisions, whether it was a caught kick like the one in round 3 or other ones, ended up with Ngannou being the better counter wrestler. and again, deceptively quick and smart in those scrambles, operating in the small spaces like I told you guys and detailed. So did I pick decision? No. I thought, again, and credit to Eric Nixick too. And then they admitted, man, they didn't see it to decision either. So, and I'm definitely not claiming that. But I did highlight the wrestling part of it. Well, so that part at least did not surprise. Of course, fallout from it. People are talking about, of course, people praising Eric Nixick's corner work after this. And again, he was my coach of the year for MMA Junkie, and I've been telling you guys about this guy for years now. So I know no one listens to this shitty podcast, but again, this is a gift to you guys. One of the many accuracies that you guys get granted through this information here that I don't get credit for. It's fine. I don't need credit. I just want to pass on the credit to the people who deserve it, like Eric and his team. So, that wasn't a surprise here. And I didn't get into it that much, and I wish I did, because there's just like, and you know me, I'm not an after-the-fact person. I rarely do this when I do. I call myself out on it, absolutely, because I hate doing it. But honestly, there's a bunch of stuff that I mean to talk about, and I don't. And the other part of it wasn't surprising, too, as far as people saying Fernando Lopez was emotional. And I thought that, too, with the dynamic going in, with the way everything was playing out. Him doing the desperate moves as far as the leaking the footage and things like that. Kind of being smug about it, even if it wasn't him. And when I was researching, I was like, oh, wow, this guy's a fighter. He's got a record. And I was like looking at him like, oh, wow, yeah, okay, this makes much more sense, right? And I'm like, oh, that's right. We have this thing where like, oh, this person fought, so he knows what he's talking about. And there's a respect that no one can take away from that, and I absolutely get it. However, as sharp as that sword is, it is a double-edged sword. The same thing when I bring out Ricardo Almeida. Why isn't he judged more? I thought he had his judge's license. Why isn't he doing it more? Why aren't more fighters doing it? Like, listen, I get it. I get that, a Ricardo Almeida or someone who fought at the UFC level knows more than, stereotypical slap dick judge, and I hate to say that because it's the same unfair stereotype that is, lazy people like Brendan Schaub with the Cheeto Fingers media people. But yeah, like I get that perspective of it, but at the same time, just because somebody was a fighter doesn't mean they're infallible. In fact, they bring a certain bias and emotion to it, between their experience, the stereotypical profile of fighters, so on and so forth, that biases become very difficult, right? And when fighters do make good corners and coaches, we're almost kind of surprised. Well, maybe not everybody, but I am to a certain extent, because a lot of times the best teachers aren't the fighters. So a lot of times the best coaches and corners aren't the fighters either. In that respect, and this is a great example of it, because you have Fernando Lopez who was, and Eric Nixick who wasn't. He didn't come up in this in the traditional sense. He comes from football, right? Even though he was bred from a coaching family. He was bred in the gym environment. He's a smart guy. He's observant. And, when you're smart and observant and in the right places, I can speak from, myself as far as not being smart, but being somewhat confident, but being lucky enough to have certain experiences, being in the right places, and take away from that. Well, go ahead and 10 and 100 and X that in all departments, especially the intelligence department, when you get to a guy like Eric. And you see that, well, as respectable, and no one's saying it's not, I certainly am not, as it is to be an ex-fighter, that doesn't guarantee you success in all things related to fighting. It's just a fact, folks, right? And the emotion, not just of being a fighter stereotypical, but even in past things. I believe it was the Shots Fired podcast I heard an interview where they interviewed Fernando Lopez. And I don't know if it was specifically about it, but I think the Aspen Lad thing was kind of coming to light. Again, something else I've kind of talked about on this podcast before. And when it really kind of hit the waves, and it really became a hot topic. after the, what was it, when Misha called her out or whatever, and it was I forget. But yeah, it was that, and Fernand Lopez, they asked, Fernand Lopez, like, you're a coach, I mean, what do you think, like, essentially, like, what do you think of this kind of a thing? And I can't quote him because I don't remember it exactly, but essentially it was his answer was along the lines of, his answer was, red flag to me at least, sometimes, like, sometimes you cannot help these things, you cannot pick love picks you, and I'm like, that sounds like me being the romantic French guy, but on the other hand, that also sounds like something statutory pedos might say to defend themselves. Certain decisions they make, I cannot choose love, it's just me. And right there, I was like, oh boy. And that popped back into my head when kind of prognosticating, the intangibles of that fight. Because there were many, right? And yeah, I just wanted to share that because I forgot to mention that, and I feel like that kind of came through the emotion, right? That's a guy who kind of, in his defense, standing by what he says, and he went in there like a quarreled lover, he went in there with a new girl, and he had the night planned, and he was going to show up his old piece, and when it started not going that way, it just fucking hit the fan. So, sorry, long recap on that, but that was kind of my thoughts, and as far as how I approach the inside information or connections, big air quotes, that I do have. No misinformation here, folks. I'm not going to falsely advertise that I got shit that I don't, and this is Tune Ngannou Fights Now. Again, I don't always pick a fighter Nick Six in the corner of folks. I try to stay unbiased as possible. You can't ever, but I do try to. I would argue more than most. And yeah, so that's twice now my receipts match the results, folks. But okay, Davison Figueiredo defeated Brandon Moreno, 48-47 times 3. I don't have an issue with that. The scores could have been everywhere. I didn't rewatch it. Off memory, I feel like round 2 was the strongest for Moreno. I feel like the commentary was strong on Moreno, which made it really hard to know. It was probably 3-1 going into, at least that's where my head was live, going into between rounds 4 and 5. But I believe that was the only time that you saw Brandon Moreno finally hit a plus number, because I picked him and wanted to play him, but just laying any kind of chalk was just tough to justify, right? Like I said in the breakdown, so I ended up laying off. But when I saw a plus number, I think what it was, like plus 125 or something, I jumped on it. I only put like a half unit on it, because if I were to have hit that, I was playing from behind at this point. I would have been just under even, which would have taken some pressure off of my last bet, which was Ngannou, which was my make or break bet for the night, right? We're gonna reverse engineer my results and ads as we go along. Apologies. And I posted that ad, in fairness, so I posted that publicly, even the live one. Thankfully, I only had enough time to do it in one house, so I only lost that in one house, in which I actually doubled down on my Francis Ngannou bet on that house to make it back up for it. Okay. But yeah, because even though at the time, and I'm sure I'll feel this even more when I go back to rewatch, I was edging him for Figueiredo. Again, it could have been 2-2, because something I said in my written breakdown on this podcast, folks, was don't be surprised to hear that. Don't forget where this fight's taking place. This isn't in Vegas. It's going to be a pro-Latinx crowd, a lot of Latinos. And we heard it, right? We heard it in the crowd. We heard him represent, right? And that was good for Moreno. That could have swayed some judges. So even though it was a miss, I still don't feel bad. If you've given all those circumstances at play, I feel like it was a justifiable shot. Public with it, with I play. Public with my miss. And then I think Moreno gives away the round. He tries to invite him in for a brawl, and I think he was winning the round, or at least you could have justified him winning a close round up until that point, just like round 3. And then even if Moreno may have gotten the better quietly have gotten the better of that exchange. Figueiredo, that's just his wheelhouse, is crazy exchanges, even though he, not to give him, I want to give him credit, obviously he has a lot of technical moves and diverse moves, but, as far as like going power for power with him, it's not a good idea. A lot of theories, I got to rewatch, so I can't really weigh in, as far as, Figueiredo and his durability, and I'll just say this much, I don't know, if, as far as, there's smarter people like me, and I'll look forward to listening to this week's Heavy Hands. Kyle and Connor talk about it as far as Figueiredo learning the lessons in certain rounds and certain narratives. I will say that I agree with it. Not that I disagree with any of it, by the way. But the part I do agree with as far as it is, and people seem to agree with me because it ties into my durability theory, which is I just still feel like Davis and Figueiredo, I don't have a problem with him winning here. It's just, I feel like it's just so dependent. And having Fight Readiness Corner, Page Note, I want to give them their proper due, will definitely help, but I just still feel like he's destined for bantamweight. He's going on 35 years old now, and he's going to be continuing to cut down a flyweight. And I feel like, even though Figueiredo was getting the better of the scoring and landing the harder shots, which led to probably scoring in his favor, that I agreed with, by the way. He's not taking the shots as well. And that, of all the narratives, there's people I respect, that's the common thread between all theirs and mine, for what it's worth. Because I've said to you guys, too, that, Moreno is the more durable man. Not only has he not been stopped, if anybody's going to be stopped, it's going to be Figueiredo, which is still held true, even though Figueiredo has won the series in my book. Somebody asked, and I think they're upset, think I'm trying to be smart or whatever, but it's like, that's my opinion. I'm going to tell you, I think Figueiredo won the series, so I wouldn't mind moving on. And then, a couple days later, just depending on how people read your replies, I get people coming at me, accusing me, saying, well, you don't want the Kaikora France Askarov winner, they don't deserve. I'm like, I'm not saying that. Fucking relax. I'm okay if they run it back a fourth time, but I'm also okay if they move on, because Figueiredo, he won 48-47 this time, and even though he should have won 48-47 in many people's eyes last time without the point deduction, I still think he should have won with the point deduction, being 48-46 or whatever is the score that should have been. Only one judge, I think, had that right. So again, people that accuse me of hating on Figueiredo, it's not that. I score these fights for them. I have no issue with that. Even though I didn't pick him here, when I picked him to win the first fight, I picked him to win by decision. Like, even people that were like, fucking guzzling, running on, Figgy's cum like it was their fuel and stuff, weren't even picking him by decision. You know what I'm saying? Like, even his nutsuckers weren't even picking him by decision. I picked him by decision. It's not that I underestimated it. It's that I just don't think he's fighting at the right weight class, And we've seen it tax him before, and he came back here, and it's great. And it's like I was telling Aaron Bronstead. It's like I know I get passionate and hyperbolic. It's not about the fighters; it's the fans. Shout out to Indecision Records. Punk hardcore punk of the early 2000s, late 90s. This band Ensign, and they had this band T-shirt. It said Ensign, their band, and it had the bass player just smashing a kid to a bloody pulp with his bass guitar, and it said Ensign, love the music, hate the kids. That's if there was a model for your boy here, folks, in this podcast, that's me. I fucking love the music. I'm very passionate about the music. I tune into the music every weekend. I cover it. I break it down. But goddamn, do I hate most of the fucking fans? Not you guys, of course. You guys are fucking great. You know what I'm saying? That's my curmudgeon ass. So it's not disrespect to Figgy. It's not disrespect to Fight Ready, because I feel like, if anything, I definitely, got to give them love. I know a lot of it is based on strength and conditioning and this and that, and they make guys look ripped, and that's been a thing in the betting community to repeat. And I've done it myself. I'm not hating on it, folks. I'm just saying, this is all ultimately conjecture. We can nudge, and even if we're pretty sure we're right, and we'll be willing to bet that we're right on certain practices, at the end of the day, we don't know. And at the end of the day, they're producing results, and they deserve the credit for it. And beyond that, you got, again, which I have given credit for, and I always make sure to give credit for, is the Santino DeFrancos of the world, but also Henry Cejudo. I know he does the cringe thing, but that was something I didn't really talk about, is Cejudo and the game plans. And this shouldn't be something that we shouldn't have been able to see as far as Figueiredo taking kicking initiative. It's something that I broke down in my. If you look at the breakdown before the first fight, I said Figueiredo needs to kick at Moreno because of his stance, so forth. He did. He wins. Next fight, I know he looked bad and was on the back foot and probably would have lost for all those reasons and more with a bad weight cut. But what happens? Moreno takes the kicking initiative right away in the second fight, and yes, of course, he coincidentally wins. Third fight, Figgy back on the kicking initiative, and we should have seen that coming, because we've seen that before. We've seen that because we've seen that, and I almost we've seen it with Zhang Weili, as far as like other champions looking to get their belt back, coming in similar scenarios, but also long sample sizes that almost extend into the MMA lab. And I say that because their striking coach Eddie Cha, Korean American guy. If not, his English is just really good. But he was the striking coach, of course, at MMA Lab. And him and John Crouch had a falling out. But, of course, he was there for a minute. And we would see leg kicks, even calf kicks. One of the earliest people to do that, of course, Benson Henderson, out of that camp. So there's always been an emphasis on leg attacks. That's where that lineage kind of travels. Now it's up at Fight Ready with Eddie Cha. So we're seeing that. Obviously, wrestling with Cejudo and bringing in wrestlers of multiple sizes. What was that noise? Oh, it's like a propeller plane. Wow. All right. That sounds awfully low. Well, if there's a crash, we know what happened. But yeah, wrestling and leg kicks. These are very tactical commonalities that we've seen come out of there. So something I should have picked up on, and something that could have been predictable ahead of this, but something we should all note ahead of time when looking at Fight Ready fighters. So I definitely want to give them a shout. Good on them for getting Figueiredo's weight that low, but still, man, I still don't. I mean, someone could come tell me otherwise, but I don't know any of the methods and any of the people out there that recommend fucking sucking yourself out in a sauna for a weight cut. I know people are trying to move away from that in recent years in general, much less, Tuesday night when you have 3 more nights to go. Jesus. But yeah. But man, good on Figueiredo. And yeah, I got no issue with the decision. I wouldn't have had an issue for Moreno, but I thought Figueiredo won it pretty clearly live. I got to rewatch it. Michel Pereira defeated Andre Fialho. Fialho showed why I was tempted to take a flyer on him, man. If you were Fialho better, that's exactly what you wanted to see as far as him getting out and pressuring it right away. Sometimes he can, stick and move a little bit too much and not get on the pressure game and be on and off it or get put off it. But he was on it for his credit. But again, Pereira was able to use kicks. Not as much wrestling as I thought, to be honest. But his straight punches and kicks and body assaults were good enough. And the decision ad for plus 225. I think it was a half unit hit, and that was certainly helpful to come back because next fight before that, excuse me, Saeed Nurmagomedov defeated Cody Stamen. Guillotine, sick ninja choke, super slick. Wasn't even mad at losing that bet because it was just like the beauty that he pulled that off against a guy like Cody Stamen, who's really tough to finish. Boy, he packed on a ton of weight too. When you look at the weight put-ons for this fight, and he didn't even get to use any of it, which is really sad. Again, felt like I was setting myself up for heartbreak, split decision heartbreak, not this heartbreak. So, I wasn't too surprised when I lost it. Apologies for that one. That one went down the hole. Michael Morales, not Miles Morales, somebody corrected me, the actual Spider-Man, defeated Trevin Giles. Jay Giles! He's showing that fight IQ, baby. pierces his guard just like I said, but Jay Giles being Jay Giles, give it away, give it away, give it away now. Jay Giles gonna give it away to Morales. Why am I not gonna go into like a Dana White? Yeah, I love fucking anything. It's not too far past the 2000s. I know I was quoting an early 90s catalog of Red Hot Chili Peppers. Anthony Kiedis in the crowd. And our friend Mandy Moore. Sorry. But yeah, what the fuck. I wasn't too mad about it because the undercash. I'm not a really big under guy. But this one honestly, I'm not even saying it in hindsight. I told you guys earlier, just the total seemed off. Why is the under plus? It should have been the other way around. It made no sense. Stylistically, mathematically, no sense. So hopefully you guys cashed. My only rep, I should have even went bigger on that play, to be honest. Of course, that's hindsight. Boy, hard to be hindsighted on this one because Victor Henry came out and just gave it to Raoni Barcelos. He just did the Max Holloway game plan on steroids and just volumed it out of the gate. Didn't even do the slow burn and slow cook with the feints and footwork. He just went out there, punches to kicks, kicks to punches. I gotta rewatch it, what he was doing exactly, but some really good stuff out there, and really took it to Barcelos, and again did the old Hickson Gracie approach in a different way. He did it to the veteran though, right? But just because he's a veteran, doesn't mean he doesn't have holes in his armor, and like the Jose Aldo like comparison he does get. Unfortunately, some of those comparisons can be compared to the negatives, which is the suspect gas tank, pockets to recoup, especially with the power that they and Barcelos in this fight especially was throwing. And that was just bad because he was throwing like he bet the inside the distance, and I'm like, oh no, just like I was warning everybody about betting Barcelos inside the distance, like Henry can't be finished, right? And as soon as and just like I said in this podcast, as I got done, talking my shit on betting hype trends, I called myself out and in my defense and said, well, it's kind of a red flag myself because I'm parlaying the biggest favorite on the card, right? Sure enough, boy, fortuitous. Hate it when I'm right, Dan. Hate it when you're right? And yeah, I was right there. That was a red flag, and it was a certainly code, bright red. As soon as that first round, I knew Henry's got this, because again, similar to go watch the documentary Choke. Listen to kind of Hickson explain it. How he talks about the incorporation of yoga and heart rates and breathing and the importance of it in a fight. Because if you can get, and your opponent's heart rate higher than yours, you got the inherent advantage. Especially if you're like a go, gadget fighter like Henry, just can go and go. Has got that tank. I don't know if he's Mexican or not. Not Mangosta, but he's got that toughness in that tank, right? Stereotypical if you want to be, but he's got it. And Barcelos needed his pockets to recoup, so he took the corner in the race. And you just saw, unless there's some kind of a serious banana peel on the track, if you're projecting forward and Barcelos makes it with the cuts and all, should be Victor Henry. And that it was, 30-27 across the board. Parlay went down the hole. It was crazy. I think we had it was like my heart was going crazy because it was my three parlay legs happened all in a row, ending with this one, right? And the ones before this hit. And easily, man, I was sweating. Despite the results on the first two, I was sweating. I'm like crazy. So when I got to Barcelos, I was like, man, I can just take a breather here. Barcelos is gonna get this, right? He's gonna fight smart, land more impactful strikes, and when Henry wants to grapple, Barcelos will be the better wrestler, and his jiu-jitsu will obviously be good enough to not get submitted, and we cash. Nope. Before that, Tony Gravely did his part, defeated Simon Oliveira. Simon Bra. Couldn't stop going for the guillotines at Oliveira, and Gravely, again, training American top teams, got Bahumpa. He was well prepared for that. It was more the striking you got to worry about getting hurt. And Oliveira, being a Muay Thai guy, again, he kind of meanders. He spins, he marches, he'll go for guillotines, and It's just not a lot of that power striking and getting to the fucking point. A little more meat and potatoes, in his game would be good. Didn't have it. So I picked Gravely. Gravely cash. Gravely. Jack Della Maddalena. Defeated Pete Rodriguez. Round 1 KO. Ugh, they just decided to just stand and trade. I was like, come on. If not, go for a takedown. Somebody, push against the cage. Nothing. It's like, oh, this round 2 ticket ain't going to hit. Forget about the round 3. Sure enough, it didn't get there. But it was okay because Maddalena was a parlay piece, right? And that's kind of the saving grace when you miss these flyers. You're like, it's okay. The bet that matters hits. So that's what really hurts about the parlay not hitting. And it sucks too because, especially in a 3-leg, even though I didn't have sprinkles on all 3 fights, I only do it if there's an angle there. But yeah, 2 out of the 3, and like I like to say to dude, is to layer the angles because if Henry Barcelos falls out, but Jack Maddalena would have finished in round 2, then we're good. I wasn't confident enough I was already overexposed that I wanted to be against with a guy like Gravely, who will look to fade in due time. But even his path to victory, he could have knocked out Oliveira, right? You know what I'm saying? So I wasn't completely set on the decision, although gun to the head, I would have said decision. I may have even on the podcast. So it just shows how crazy this game is. You can think that okay, I've got a healthy spray. I got to hit something with this fucking spray, right? No, not this time. Sorry to the D-Loves of the D-Love round players. Master of Love. Especially for the round 3s. Vanessa Demopolis defeated Sylviana Gomez-Juarez. Didn't look into these fights too much. Didn't want to invest in them. And for good reason, because the analysis was right. Even though the pick was wrong, picked Gomez for her striking, which she showed, but Demopolis had that grappling, which saved her ass. Joe Rogan was getting his ego just fucking blown up. Don't even want to get another fucking Rogan talk, man. Jesus Christ. Matt Frevola, Steamroller, defeated Gennaro Valdez. Again, that could have been the parlay piece, but again, if I can't front, because it was between him and Tony Gravely, right? All right, then if not, it would have been between him and Jack Della. Again, Barcelos was the most confident leg, so there was nothing saving me from parlays. I would have eaten it either way, and I would have still sweat probably even the hardest with this one because Frevola went out there and almost gave the fight to Valdez before dropping him multiple times. Before, I don't know who it was. Was it Beltran? Whoever it was, should have probably stopped that sooner for sure. Jasmine Jasvizius defeated Kay Hansen. Good for Jasmine. The size thing kept me away for good reason because probably would have paid a pretty penny for Kay Hansen, who's moving back down a division. So the dogs were barking. I should have done the old pick the dog and Tout Master kind of a thing because now for the first time I can actually say that because I'm in the Tout Master thing. It's funny. People can already guess my name in there, which says a lot about me. But shouts if you're participating in that. But yeah, that was the recap on that card. What did we do on time for that one? 48. All right. All right. Quickly, we'll just read some. You can use some listening stuff. Before we get to the Bellator, I'm just going to read some Amazon reads real quick. MixedMartialAnalyst.com. You can go to support this podcast. It's free. MixedMartialAnalyst.com, linked all this stuff, including the PayPal secure donation link, linked in my link tree at DanTom MMA on Twitter, the only social media I'm somewhat active on, pretty much. And MixedMartialAnalyst.com, of course, where I started it and host this podcast. To the right, you can get that same PayPal link as well as an Amazon link. All you do is click once, takes you to Amazon, do your normal shopping. I know we hate supporting these billionaire companies, but there are certain realities in life and maybe some things that, I don't want to say you need to, you don't need to. You know what I mean? If you're going to do it, at least ease your conscience and support free programming that hopefully has helped make you some money and, not asking for any money in return. In fact, if you just click that link through mixedmartialanalyst.com, toggle to the right if you're on a mobile, and you do your normal shopping, a small percentage of your shopping gets kicked back to this here podcast at no extra cost to you at all. Just a small percentage of whatever sale you conduct. A small percentage gets kicked back to us. Someone bought Honey Care All Absorb. I don't know what that is, but thank you for buying that. Someone bought No Way Home on Ultra HD. That's the spy. Hey, speaking of Michael Morales there, right? Someone bought Smart Deals Pro Color 1.5 inch plastic counting counters, poker chips, set of 100. Card game with the boys. That sounds fun. I wish I had friends. U Simples 1114 picture frame, set of 5 display pictures for wall gallery photo frames. Posing some nice photos. Dune Ultra HD. I think I watched this the other night. I was really fucked up though. More DVDs. Godfather 50. Has it been fucking 50 years? Jesus. Ultra HD box set. Godfather 50-year anniversary. Where does the time go? Fill-top engine air filter replacement. That reminds me, I gotta replace the AC filter. I want to do that maybe tonight before Imagine comes over. Not that, I'm not contagious of COVID, but, let's just get the bad air out. I'll probably due to change that thing anyways. Every 6 months, folks, make sure you're changing your AC filters. Fill-top premium cabin air filter. There we go. For a Civic, CRV Civic. Oh, nice. All right, thank you for buying that. Someone bought, what is this? Logitech G Pro X gaming mouse. Ooh, let me know how that works. I'm not ready to build my computer yet, but if I have to get a gaming mouse, let me know what you guys think is good. Same person that bought that probably bought this. I'm guessing Razer Kraken gaming headset tournament edition. Wow. I mean, hey, I like to release the Kraken in front of the computer just like any guy, but this stuff sounds serious. Let me know how that works for you. It's funny. I got these Audio Technica. Those aren't badly priced either. I rock these Audio Technicas. They're wired, not wireless, that I use for recording and editing. And I'm so stupid. I've had these for like years now. Like, I randomly am like, you know what? Music probably sounds really good in these things. Of course. Why don't I just listen to music when I'm writing? Why do I listen to it on the shitty laptop computers? I have these headphones right in front of me. And I was just, oh man, I was loving it. It was just, I think I had For Whom the Bells Toll or something. And I can hear Cliff Burton slapping the bass. I can hear the bass to slapping. And I like to hear the basses slapping, slap the bass. So that's just really fucking cool. All right, someone got a Trollovol set of 3 collapsible microwave lid for reheating food and meal prep. Meal prep, that's right. Getting on it. Hey, Asian representation in the house. This wasn't me, I swear to God. Someone bought Shang-Chi on Ultra HD. I don't know, man. I've been trying to watch these Marvel. I'm having a tough time getting through them. I gotta have my own. Everyone has their own, recap series, and it's usually the same fucking 3 dudes, and it's just so fucking milquetoast shit. I should do my own recap YouTube series of MCU films where it's my drug-induced late night half falling asleep watching in 5 different installments recap spoiler edition of the Marvel movies, Doctor Strange, more like Doctor Date Rape. This guy was not a likable character. I'm trying, folks. I have the film lover in me and contrarian in me just really fights back when it comes to these kind of movies. Not hating on it. Again, I'm trying to enjoy what I can from them. I am not judging, but I've got a lot of other better stuff to catch up on. I did knock out Ozark. As far as I know it's not movies, but whatever, and some other stuff while I've been recovering. Someone got short USB-C to USB 60-watt cable 2-pack. Nice. What else we got here? Someone got the Hobbit trilogy, story of Alexander Volkanovsky's quest to the featherweight title. Someone got that's not what this is about, folks. For those that don't know, Jesus, Smarty Pants Kids Formula. Okay, all right. And I'm guessing the same person got this. Aquaphor Baby Healing Ointment. All right. Cool. That wraps up the links. Thank you for using that. That's mixedmartialanalyst.com. Thank you for supporting the podcast. Again, doesn't cost you anything. Just click through. And that is done. All right. We got Eagle FC or whatever going on. I didn't really look into much of this stuff. Let's look at some odds here. Spong, Karatanov. I don't know what either guy has been doing. Karatanov's kind of always fighting. I always like Karatanov as a dog, but, you know, I don't even know. Is this like boxing rules? I don't even know what the fuck the fight is, so who knows? Great analysis here. Rashad Evans is a dog to a guy that I remember is not that great. But you're betting on Rashad Evans at that point. Good luck. Cody Gibson's a dog to Ray Borg. Cody Gibson, I think I could see him being really scrambly and competitive first 2 rounds. But if he can't maybe catch Ray Borg by the second, maybe he's falling behind on scrambles. I don't know. Ramzan Nurmagomedov should be a favorite over John Howard. It's a big favorite, granted. Raymond Michael, I don't know who the fuck that is, and fighting Anthony Njokuani. Maybe he's an ACA guy. I don't know. One of you kids can tell me. Got Dylan Salvador. I don't know who that is. Yagan De Castro. Yagan. Chuck, I had a double burger. Yagan's minus 450. That can't be good. Miles Hunsinger. Can we have him fight Harry Hunsucker? No, probably not. I don't know who that is. Zach Zane. Hey, Hawaii guy. Big underdog to Radzabov. Zach Zane's pretty experienced. I don't know if he gets up to like 4-1, so I'm small on him for shits, but yeah, nothing there, folks. I wouldn't touch it. I am probably not even going to watch it. Probably not going to watch this until maybe like the main event. We got Valentin Moldavsky minus 255, Ryan Bader plus 205. Moldavsky opened minus 150, Bader 120. I would still take a shot on Bader at those odds, but I can at least understand that opening. Public went and ran and almost had, they had fucking Moldavsky up at like 3-1 odds earlier in the week. It was stupid. And I don't get it, man. Like, I just wasn't impressed with this guy. He's not even a Greco guy. He just does everything from the clinch. It's because he came from judo. He grew up as a kid doing judo and then did sambo. And he was going to be a lawyer. He was on pace to be a lawyer and was just like competing in amateur, like not too seriously. Didn't take it serious until he meets, he gets the blessing, meets Fedor Emelianenko, kind of gets the blessing, invited to train with him. Well, that kind of changes everything. And you can kind of see why. People are like, look, Nemkov looks bigger than this guy. Like, he's not a very big heavyweight. So he kind of becomes the perfect prototype training partner for both Nemkov or Fedor, because he's that tweening size. He's bigger than Fedor, but he's a little smaller actually than Nemkov. He's probably a little thicker than Nemkov, but I still think Bader's more muscular, more stronger, more knockout power, the stronger grappler as far as locking up with guys. Moldavsky's a light heavyweight. He's fought at light heavyweight all his amateur career, and maybe even his first fight as a pro, depending on what you're reading and looking up, and then was just essentially in the 230s or whatever, which is where like Bader walks around in. Bader probably come in, hopefully not in the 230s, maybe high 220s. That's where 225 to 228s, where he's just weighed in for his heavyweights fights, and he's undefeated, no contest included, that he was on his way to wrestling another heavyweight against the cage. Moldavsky, he tends to fight off the back foot, and he gets pushed back to the cage a lot, and he's okay with it because again, back to my previous note, most heavyweights can't wrestle. So even though he can shoot. I've seen him shoot I think twice for the legs. He does have a reactive shot, even though it's not like anything to write home about. Bader's is way better, of course. That's easy to say, even at this stage of his career. He's mainly like outside trip, not even really inside trip guy, mainly outside trip, shuck to the back, kind of Polish throws, turning corners from the body lock, deep in on the hips, kind of a deal maybe. And I don't think he's going to be able to do that against Bader. Bader's super savvy in the clinch. Like, Bader will even hit judo stuff on guys too. Hip tosses and whatnot. Like, he's not just, He's good in the clinch, but Bader is a leg shot wrestler, and Moldavsky's never faced many of those. Even when in fact, whenever guys are shot for the legs, when they're not wrestlers, they've got him down. When they're not those type of wrestlers, whatchamacallit, Linton Vassell is owning him early in their fight. And if Bader gets in those control positions, Moldavsky's not getting back up. Moldavsky was kind of even lucky to get up against Vassell. He used the same get-up each time as when Vassell moved to mount. He did like Alexander Tumanov and a lot of these Russians do. They just time, they stay calm, and then they have really good bridges, and they time it really well with their explosion. They explode and they bridge. A really good bridge will get you out of a lot, and I feel like that is stressed amongst a lot of the Russian wrestling, even if they're not Russian wrestlers per se. But that's not gonna be enough against Bader. And I don't think he's going to get him down. In fact, Valentin Moldavsky doesn't get guys down with high regularity at all. A lot of times they have to tire themselves out, and he steadily works them over. And he'll kind of do that punch and clutch thing, or punch and then clinch, punch and clinch. And it's almost always a right hand, left hook, some variation. He seldomly goes to the body. And the one thing he does good off the right hand that he likes to lead off of is he does roll off of it, and then he'll throw a left hook on top of it. Or he'll right hand and duck in to roll and get kind of smothered by the clinch, and then when he pushes off the clinch, that left hook will follow. So it's like it's fucking hardwired into his head. It's the same combinations. Every once in a while, like when he faces a southpaw, then he's more feint heavy, and it's more of that fedor, feint, look at the birdie with the left, here's the right hand, or checking left hook, right hand return. But it's really just back and forth, lead right, left hook, checking left hook, return right. Lead right, left hook, checking left hook, return right if I'm on the back foot. It's the same fucking shit. And the guy has no knockout power. He has one TKO in his record. It's the one finish he got in his Bellator. It's a guy named Ernest James, who looks like an old, out-of-shape wrestler who got hyped up and put in there. And that was like his second pro fight against Moldavsky, who was already like north of 10 fights with all his amateur Sambo championship experience. It was just the guy was a punching bag essentially, and his eyes closed, and his eye got closed early on in the round. It meant nothing. And then his other three finishes are the very first fights of his career. I think like armbar and like shit off his back even too. Or they're just rear naked chokes, I think. But it was just like against nobodies early on in his career. Almost 10 years ago. The guy hasn't finished anybody. Doesn't look like he has knockout power. Doesn't have diversity that you have to plan around for. Does not appear to be the better wrestler. Isn't even like active with ground and pound. Doesn't even look to really throw elbows. Doesn't look to threaten with submissions to get advances and to feed into strikes and so on and so forth, making a kind of a trap game. Nothing. Doesn't have any of these things. I think he is an undersized heavyweight with a bare minimum of wrestling, which means he can out-wrestle and or tire guys enough out to out-wrestle them as he fights in B-League heavyweights against primarily B-League heavyweights for the most part. Tim Johnson is an upper body wrestler and probably could have got a lot done considering what his lone loss. That, in his defense, if you're really looking at damage, you could probably have made an argument for Moldavsky, or at least they should have at least gone to the third round. But still, it was essentially an inexperienced Greco guy, I believe, Amir Alagbari. And even that guy was like hitting takedowns that weren't part of his normal regime, like double legs and stuff. Again, anybody who's shot legs, whether they're wrestlers or not, been able to take Moldavsky down. That's the funny thing. He's won fights on very close margins. I mean, he is the bare minimum of wrestling to get by. And Tim Johnson, even though he's more of a clinch wrestler too, when I went back to watch that fight, like, it's way closer. It's fucking Doug Crosby 50-45. It's easy. Tim Johnson easily is two of those rounds, and you can make an argument that round one was a swing round that could have gone to Johnson as well. So, like, there's an argument for Tim Johnson to have won that fight. And Tim Johnson didn't even shoot one takedown and still had an argument to win that fight. I scored it from Moldavsky by the slightest. He barely edged out round one in my book off first watch and won rounds 3 and 4. Tim Johnson 2 and 5. But again, very slim margins, So unless Bader is like I said, I tried to be like disrespectful, but like said in my article, like, unless Bader is like PTSD-ridden Renan Barão levels of shot, he should win this fight. And you're going to give me 2-1 odds? The guy's not going to knock him out, not going to submit him, so he's going to have to win a decision when he hasn't gone deep, and he looks like he has suspect cardio. Like, he gassed in a 3-round fight against Roy Nelson. He looked like he improved his pace against Tim Johnson, but the dude was, like, gassed after 3 rounds with the Roy Nelson. He could barely even speak. The fuck do you think Ryan Bader's going to do to him? Is he going to beat Ryan Bader by decision? You know how many people have beaten Ryan Bader by decision? You know what decisions Ryan Bader lost, folks? 0. I think even in his grappling matches and shit, like, he didn't lose decisions there. He had to be, like, submitted by, like, grappling aces or something. 0 decisions, folks. Like, you got to stop that guy. He's got to combust himself. And I don't even know if he can combust. I think he can combust and still recover against a guy like Moldavsky, because Moldavsky's not going to fucking put him away, and he's not going to outlast him cardio-wise. Like, this line makes no fucking sense, and I could easily lose my money here because it's MMA and it's heavyweight. But, oh my God, I'm telling you, the number makes no fucking sense. You cannot justify this. You cannot justify this price. Moldavsky may win, but I stand by this. It's not sour grapes. This argument still stands fucking true regardless of it. And for that reason, I will put my money where my mouth is. I put a whole unit on Bader at plus 225, which is a lot for me at least. So, yeah, that's my play going into this weekend. Below that, we have Islam Mamedov, big favorite against Benson Henderson. Picks Mamedov. Makes me want to take a flyer on Henderson. But I feel like Henderson's pretty. I mean, you want to talk about near the end and shot. And again, lighter weight class, more miles, etc. I can't trust Benson Henderson. Aiden Lee, I'll pick him to beat Henry Corrales. The line jump kind of interesting. The line movement on this a bit. Kind of went back and forth a bit, looks like. Let's see, what did Aiden open up as? Yeah, he opened as a dog and correct himself. I get it. I pick Aiden too. I like Corrales. You know, maybe he's got another upset in him, but I'll pick Aiden Lee. But again, it's nothing I'd be confident to put my money on. I mean, Bellator for one, it's something about betting it, and then these matchups are deceptively competitive for Bellator. It's like not the smash matches that you would expect to see, right? Aside from my guy Dalton Rasta, we'll get to that. Jaleel Willis versus Saba Homasi. I guess I'll pick Willis, but again, so Homasi seems like a live dog. He surprised me before. Come to fight, just that gas tank is just not something I'd want to bet on, even with the dog price attached. Barzola minus 125, Caldwell plus 105. This is an interesting one. Caldwell opened the favorite, but people faded him. And I get it. If you got Barzola at plus money, I don't blame you playing Barzola, but seeing him as a favorite, it's definitely dog or pass now with Darian Caldwell. Because Barzola, even though you'd like to think of him as consistent, because he's, tough South American warrior, but he's had some really suspect fight IQ. And his wrestling, that's not ever really been anything super great to write home about. Like, even for his level of good, air quote, good wrestling for him, I've seen that vary in fights, both with capability and fight IQ. And so I know he jumped around camps as well, so I'm not confident in it. I'll pick Caldwell, but Caldwell's fight IQ is so bad that he doesn't understand the damage when fights. Like, he could win the wrestling here and still lose the fight again because off of bad fight IQ. So it's 2 bad fight IQs. I'm going to go with the better wrestler in Caldwell. I'm not going to play it, even though that plus money is real tempting. I'm going to root for y'all if you guys played it. I can't trust my money there. I already got enough. The unit is more than enough exposed on Bellator for me. Sadawad plus 180. Chris Gonzalez minus 220. Chris Gonzalez a bit let down from his last performance. Not necessarily who he fought, but just maybe how he looked. Sadawad is a dog who will fight for your money. I'm a big fan of Sadawad. Done breakdown shows with him in the past. Cool guy. But I'll go Chris Gonzalez here. I don't know. I wouldn't put him in a parlay. I feel like Saad's always in the fight. Dalton Rasta, I mean, I don't know if you can put him in a parlay anymore at minus 760, but yeah, he is obviously a prospect. against Dwayne The Rock Johnson. The Rock said The Rock's laying the smackdown. Do you smell your Rudy Poo? Candy X-Pac, you bony jabroni. Sorry. I had to revisit 1998 there. Yeah, if you didn't notice, if you have a name resembling a celebrity, Bellator will sign to you. Don't know Sullivan Cully or Ben Paddish. I don't know why I said it with the name. You know, they sound like good Irish boys gonna fight it out. Oh, those Cully boys. It's a terrible accent. Sorry. Lucas Brennan, big favorite over Ben Lugo, unbettable. Same with Nikita Mikhailov over Blaine Shutt. Yeah, that's Bellator. Again, just a unit on Bader. That's all I got. That's all I got for you guys here. Kind of a long podcast, but hopefully it was content for you. Good luck if you're playing anything this weekend. Enjoy MMA, and I'll see you next weekend for Strickland Hermanson. All right, until next time, protect your neck.